Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening to the Reverend and Sheikh. This question is for the both of you. I just want to hear the viewpoint from each religion as to the addictive nature of these technologies, particularly, the iGods, the iPhones, Facebook, Instagram, because we're not really talking about GMF or weapons of mass destruction. That's not really the battlefield for the masses today. It's really, Muslims pray 5 times a day, but how many times do we actually look at our phones, before we go to sleep? So can you kind of touch on that and help us through it? Thank you.
I'll let Shaykh Hamzah rest a bit because he sweated a lot just now. It was like, looking at him was like running a marathon and he was going for it, and I just enjoyed his energy. And some parts I wanted to say, preach it, brother. But back to your question just now. I think the last 2 days there was some interesting, and this is the irony, I saw it on my Facebook. There was this interesting comment from former Facebook executives that talk about the addictive nature and how they regret to some extent how Facebook has become what they probably did not intend it to be. Like many things in life, we intend the knife for cutting that beautiful, by the way, I'm still thinking about your burger right now, that lamb burger. You're thinking it's meant for that, but sadly, it's used for something else. But I think my suspicion is there are likely enough literature there in social psychology or even biological studies that actually probably can tell us from a scientific book of nature perspective how embodied we are. Actually, that point is interesting. Even the Christian understanding is we believe in the resurrection of the body. So we don't believe in disembodied spirits, after we die. So it's about a resurrection of the body, and that's a very important truth to remind ourselves that we are an integrated being. So in many ways, we may think that we are just using our minds. We are using language here to access these things, but actually there's neurons, there's signals going on in our brains, there are habits being formed, and I think many a times we are just unaware. And today, I'm not an expert in this area. I guess we can talk to those who are more expert to know the mechanics of it all. But I think today our goal is to raise that awareness. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they have this first step to freedom is to admit my need. Before you talk about believing in a higher power, the first step is to admit I have a need. I think one of the problems that we have is that, did you see anyone who's addicted that says that they have an addiction problem? No, right? Until family relationships are torn apart, until things go really haywire, and then when they are hitting the wall, and then they suddenly realize, sadly, it can be too late. And on the part of the little story, I just want to tag on to the story of Shaykh Hamzah here, and I'm using Shaykh because it's an honorable title as well. It's mutual here. I know of a story in the Bible that talks about Jesus having a conversation with his disciples because others accused Jesus of his disciples eating without washing their hands. And I think all of us understand the importance of washing our hands, especially in the Middle Eastern culture, as well as for religious purity reasons, right? And then there's this famous phrase that you might have heard also, that Jesus said, it is not what goes into you that makes you unclean, it is what comes out of your heart that makes you unclean. And I think that's a good point because in the Old Testament, we also have that phrase that says, the heart is deceitful above all else. And there are many things in life that I guess, if you want to go for a more spiritual perspective, for self-examination, when we succumb to addiction, it's because there's a lack of self-awareness, one, and self-examination. And just to slightly close this part, recently I had a chance to actually go into the wilderness. When I say wilderness, it's like desert. And in Malaysia, it's very hard to find. There's a wilderness of concrete jungle, that's different. Or we may say Singapore, sorry, Singapore friends. But, but as in desert, that means you go there, there's practically nothing, you hear nothing. And you just see, you can just feel the sand, the rocks. And there was something about being in the desert that for me was spiritually refreshing. Why? Because when you're stripped away from all this, suddenly you have a sudden awareness of what's in your heart. And that's scary. And I guess as a person of faith, I want to humble myself before God and say, God, if there's these addictions, these things that I'm wrestling with, I want to be honest and submit them to you. And in this sense, really, it's really about the last verse that I quoted. Jesus said, you will know the truth, and here is the truth of who I am, and that truth will set me free. So there's just some comments mixed with some others. And Shaykh Hamzah, please add on.
So the news story he referenced, one of the founders of Facebook, and this is because of his very gentle nature that he mentioned it very gently. What I remember from having read the article is essentially one of the co-founders of Facebook. He said, we knew that we are essentially getting people addicted to this. We're messing with their minds. The dopamine rush, what you get when you receive like a notification or a like or whatever, it's the same thing that makes you addicted to heroin. Now, you kids are good kids. You probably never did heroin before, did you? No. Rayan, you're not? No? Good. Keep it that way. Good kid. Alhamdulillah. It's the same thing, though. That's kind of scary, isn't it? They did it on purpose. You have to understand, and this is one of the things that I want to... they did it on purpose. It's not a conspiracy. They knew they were going to make money. Did they make money from that? Right? Imagine Facebook is a thing. How much does it cost to open a Facebook account? Zero. They're making billions of dollars. Figure that out. I mean, there's something big going on there if they can make billions of dollars from that. The idea is that nowadays, part of the disease, I think, of society is this hyper-materialism where people have become, I mean, they were materialistic in the past, trust me. But now people say, does our certainty and our faith is in material things, spiritual things. We say they don't even exist. We claim that they don't even exist, to the point where society will say, okay, you're a religious person. You can do whatever you want to on your time off, but don't mention any of that stuff during work or during school or any of those things. Why? Because it really doesn't exist, right? It exists. You'll ignore it to your own peril. You'll ignore it to your own detriment. And the reason for saying all of this is what? You as a human being, that you know one day you're going to die, one day you're going to have to go and account for your deeds, one day you're going to have to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't ever feel bad and don't ever feel guilty or let anyone make you feel bad about taking care of your spiritual well-being. Everybody's different with regards to these things. Right? Muslims, we don't drink, so we don't, and hopefully most of us are not familiar with this, but there are some people, they can have one or two drinks and that's fine because their disposition is like that physically. There's some people are alcoholics. Once they start, they cannot stop themselves until they completely have like passed out and destroyed themselves. Spiritually, people are like that as well. If the Facebook is killing you, just stop using it. If the phone is killing you, just stop using it. If the addiction to pornography is killing you, is destroying the relationship between you and your wife, you're going to end up making your entire household broken because of it. You won't die if you have a dumb phone and just check your email like from work or from the library. People will laugh at you. That's okay. You know, imagine if you had to take like medicine for heart for some sort of disease, and they laughed at you for taking it. Are you going to stop taking it? No, because if you stop taking it, you'll die. You don't ever, like with regards to addiction, I don't know what detailed answer I can give in such a short amount of time, except for what? Don't ever have to explain yourself or feel guilty or whatever to take those steps you need to in order to safeguard your spiritual well-being. And it may be different for different people. That's fine. We find examples of that every human being is different than the next one. But you have to be honest with yourself and protect yourself as well. Don't trust your spiritual well-being to unscrupulous people. Who? The movies that you watch, do you think the people who write them are want to make you a better person, or do you think the people who write them are just trying to do whatever they can to make money? The television you watch, the news that you watch, all of these things. know that these are people. It's just like when you go into the market, right? If you're a very naive person, if someone says, "Oh, buy this product, it's the best thing in the world for you," you have to think about it because you know they're trying to make a buck off of you. But we trust our mind, we trust our heart to all sorts of different things. I'm not saying you have to stop watching everything and stuff, but you should also have some sort of like common sense with regards to your own well-being, that you don't trust, like, you don't just say, "Hey, hold my wallet, I'm going to be back in 10 days. You don't do that with people. Why? It's just a bad idea. Spiritually, also, you shouldn't feel bad about not doing that with all of these different things that come to the heart.